The orc woman paid 300 crowns for Rowan's freedom and set the contract on fire before he could ask her name. The auction clerk screamed first. He lunged across the table, reaching for the parchment as orange flame curled through the royal seal. The orc woman held it above his grasp with one green hand. She watched the ink blacken, waited until the last line of ownership disappeared, and dropped the burning scrap into a brass bowl. "That document belongs to me," she said. Her voice was low enough that the noisy riverside square fell strangely quiet around it. Rowan stood on the auction platform with iron cuffs around his wrists and rain running from his hair into his eyes. 6 other debt prisoners waited behind him beneath a striped awning. Merchants crowded the square below, sheltering under dark umbrellas while river barges groaned against the flooded quay. The clerk stared at the ash. "You purchased the remaining 11 years of his sentence. I purchased the paper. The paper grants custody of the man." The orc woman turned toward Rowan. She was taller than most of the human guards and carried herself like the deck beneath her feet, moved even when the ground did not. Her skin was a deep olive green, warmed by bronze undertones. 2 small ivory tusks rose past her lower lip, the right one fitted with a narrow brass cap. Heavy black hair was braided down her back and bound at intervals with brass rings. A fitted river coat of dark red leather followed the strong lines of her shoulders and waist. Beneath it, she wore black trousers, high boots, and a curved knife at one hip. Her golden amber eyes settled on the cuffs. "Open them," she said. The clerk found his courage behind procedure. "The transfer has not been registered." "Then register it quickly. There are fees." She placed one more gold coin on the table. The clerk looked at the coin, then at the woman, and decided that bureaucracy had been satisfied. One of the guards unlocked Rowan's wrists. The iron fell away. He had imagined that moment for 14 months. In every version, he laughed, struck someone, or ran until the prison walls vanished behind him. Instead, he stood motionless, rubbing the raw skin beneath one cuff and watching his freedom turn to gray ash in a bowl. The orc woman stepped down from the platform. "Wait," Rowan said. She did not. He followed her through the crowd, nearly colliding with a fishmonger. "You just spent 300 crowns. I counted them. You burned the only proof that I belong to you." She stopped so abruptly that he almost walked into her back. When she faced him, the crowd found other directions to look. "You do not belong to me," she said. "Then why buy the contract?" "Because the clerk would not accept a polite request." "You know what I mean." "I usually do." She continued toward the quay. Rowan followed again, though nothing prevented him from turning toward the city gates. That fact made every step feel like a decision. "Who are you?" he asked. "Vaela." "Only Vaela?" "At present." "And what do you want from me?" She glanced at the rain-dark river. 7 days. "Doing what?" "Traveling north." "Why?" "Because the river flows that way when the floodgates are closed." Rowan caught her arm. He regretted it immediately. Vaela looked down at his hand on her red leather sleeve. She did not reach for the knife, but the possibility remained present. Rowan released her. "I spent 14 months taking orders without answers. I will not begin freedom by doing it again." Something shifted behind her eyes. Not anger. Recognition, perhaps. "Fair," she said. She pointed toward the city beyond the square. Gray towers rose above streets webbed with canals. At every bridge stood a pair of river wardens wearing the blue sash of the Merchants' Council. "You may leave," Vaela said. "The contract is gone. No lawful person can return you to the quarry." "And the unlawful ones?" The man who arranged your conviction has posted wardens at the North Gate, the South Gate, and every passenger dock. Rowan's mouth went dry. Holt knows I was sold today. Holt selected the buyers he would permit. I was not among them. Yet the clerk took your money. The clerk likes money more than he fears Holt. Briefly. She resumed walking. My vessel leaves in 20 minutes. It is the only boat on this quay whose crew does not answer to the council. You can come aboard, or you can test whether freedom makes you faster than 6 wardens. Rowan watched a blue-sashed man turn toward them from the nearest bridge. 7 days, he said. Vaela gave a single nod. And then? Then I put you ashore wherever you choose. You still haven't told me why. No. Do you intend to? Eventually. It was a terrible offer. It was also the first offer in 14 months that included a choice. Rowan followed her to the river. If you enjoy original Orcbound fantasy romances and want to support the creation of future stories, you can join Tales from Orc on Patreon. The link is waiting in the description. Now, back to Vaela and Rowan. Vaela's vessel was called the Reed Wolf. It was a long, shallow riverboat, built from black cedar, with a narrow wheelhouse at the stern and a red-painted cabin beneath the raised center deck. Brass lanterns hung from curved posts along both sides. Unlike the gilded passenger barges nearby, the Reed Wolf carried no council banner. A small iron wolf marked the bow, its jaws holding a sprig of river grass. The crew prepared to cast off as Vaela crossed the gangplank. There were no more than 8 of them, humans and orcs together, all dressed for work rather than display. They greeted her with a short nod given to a captain who did not need to announce her authority. Rowan hesitated on the quay. The nearest warden had begun walking toward him. Vaela did not look back. The plank rises in 10 seconds. Rowan stepped aboard on the 9th. The ropes were released. A square red sail climbed the mast, caught the wind, and carried the Reed Wolf into the brown current. The auction square slid away behind them. Only when the city wall was a gray line in the rain did Rowan understand that no chain connected him to anything. He touched his bare wrists. Vaela stood at the wheel, one hand on a brass lever, while she called depths to a crewman at the bow. The river widened beyond the last warehouse, swallowing roads, fields, and half the willow forest on either side. Flood season had come early. Fence posts rose from the water like short black teeth. Rowan approached the wheelhouse. "Where do I sleep?" "Captain's cabin." He looked at her. "There is 1 bunk," she added. "I noticed the singular. You will use it. And you?" "I have a hammock in the wheelhouse." This arrangement becomes stranger each time you explain it. Vaela adjusted the wheel. "Would you prefer the crew berth?" "Would they prefer me?" "No." "Then the cabin." She pointed with her chin toward a hatch. "Dry clothes are inside. Food is on the table. The door has a lock on your side." Rowan studied her profile. Rain shone on her green cheek and along the brass cap on her tusk. "You planned for me," he said. "I dislike improvising with trousers. You knew my size." "Approximately." "How?" "You were displayed on a platform." The answer was reasonable and somehow not convincing. Inside the cabin, a folded set of clothes waited on the bunk. Dark trousers, a white linen shirt, wool socks, and a brown coat. They fit almost perfectly. The food was still warm. Rowan had eaten prison porridge that morning and nothing the day before. He told himself he would take only a little. 10 minutes later, the plate held no evidence that roasted chicken, onions, and black bread had ever existed. After changing, he examined the cabin. It was unmistakably Vaela's. River charts covered one wall, their corners pinned with brass nails. A carved wooden comb lay beside a wash basin. 3 red coats hung inside a narrow wardrobe. A shelf above the bunk held dried flowers, navigation tools, and a small clay figure of an orc woman carrying a child. The door did have a lock on the inside. Rowan tested it twice. Then he tested the round window, the floorboards, and the storage chest beneath the bunk. Nothing was hidden except a bottle of plum liquor and a romance novel with the cover removed. He was replacing the book when the door opened. Vaela leaned against the frame. She had removed the wet river coat. Beneath it, she wore a fitted black shirt with the sleeves rolled above her elbows, revealing strong forearms marked with pale geometric ink. "Find anything dangerous?" she asked. Rowan held up the book. "Possibly. The ending is disappointing. You removed the cover. The title was worse than the ending." He placed it back. "You said the lock was on my side." "It is. You did not use it. I didn't expect you to enter. It remains my cabin. Then perhaps we should establish rules." Vaela folded her arms. "Establish them. Knock." "Agreed. Do not search my things. You have no things. I may acquire some. Then I will resist them. And you answer one question every day. No. That is not how negotiation works. It is how doors work." She tapped the frame. "The first 2 rules are sensible. The third is an attempt to obtain information I already refused. Then one question that has nothing to do with why you bought my contract." Vaela considered him. 1. Truthfully? If the question deserves truth, that is a dangerous qualification. So are most freedoms. The answer irritated him because he wanted to remember it. He sat on the edge of the bunk. "First question. How did you know Holt arranged my conviction?" "That has everything to do with why I bought your contract." "I didn't ask why you bought it. I asked how you knew." Vaela's eyes narrowed with reluctant amusement. "You were a cartographer for the Crown Survey. Holt wanted your floodplain maps. You refused to alter them. A month later, guards found council silver in your room and charged you with theft. Even a sailor can follow that current. Most people did not. Most people were paid not to. Were you?" "That is a second question." She knocked twice on the open door, making the brass rings in her braid click. "Dinner at sunset. I already ate. That was midday food. It was enough for 3 men." Vaela looked at the empty plate. 2, perhaps. She left before he could decide whether he had been insulted. At sunset, 2 black-sailed boats appeared behind the Reed Wolf. "Holt's rivermen," Vaela said. The crew covered the lanterns and opened the red sail. Vaela ordered Rowan below. He obeyed for 10 seconds, climbed through the cabin window, and reached the deck as the first attacker crossed a boarding rope. Rowan could not shoot well, but the brass depth pole required less skill. He swung it into the boarder's stomach and sent him into the river. "I said stay below," Vaela called, parrying another man's blade. "I misunderstood the geography." A crossbow bolt tore across her right shoulder. Vaela cut the boarding rope before the blood reached her hand. The Reed Wolf caught the wind and surged over a hidden mudbank. Both pursuing boats struck it hard and vanished behind the reeds. Only then did Vaela sway. Rowan caught her around the waist. "Cabin. I can walk. Then walk while I hold you." Inside, he found the medicine box and cut away the torn sleeve. The bolt had carved a deep line below her shoulder without remaining inside. "I need to move your shirt away from the wound," he said. "May I?" Her guarded amber eyes held his. Then she nodded. "Yes." Rowan exposed only the injured shoulder. A pale branching tattoo crossed her collarbone. He cleaned the cut and threaded a curved needle. This will hurt. Everything useful does. That is a terrible philosophy. It has been reliable. His palm steadied her warm green skin while he placed the stitches. Vaela never flinched, though her free hand pressed hard into the cedar bunk. When he finished, his fingertips lingered beneath her collarbone. Their eyes met. The boat moved softly under them. For one suspended moment, neither remembered the men behind them or the destination ahead. Rowan reached for the bandage. Why were the clothes in my exact size? You're using your second question early. We were attacked. The day feels nearly complete, I asked the prison tailor. When? Yesterday. He wrapped the linen around her shoulder. To tie it, he leaned across her, and Vaela's uninjured hand settled at his side as the boat turned. You are not afraid of me, she said. Should I be? Most men at the auction were. Most men did not watch you burn 300 crowns. That should increase fear. It increased curiosity. Her thumb shifted once against his shirt. Curiosity drowns more sailors than storms. And yet you captain a boat. Vaela smiled. It was warm, dangerous, and impossible to mistake. Rowan nearly forgot the knot in his hands. She spent the night in the wheelhouse hammock, leaving him the only bunk on her own vessel. Before dawn, Rowan found her asleep beneath a red blanket, one hand near the knife on her belt. Without command in her expression, she looked not weak but briefly unguarded. She opened one eye. If you plan to steal the boat, turn left at the next fork. The right channel ends in rocks. You were asleep. I was assessing your intentions horizontally. Your shoulder? Attached. Rowan checked the bandage. No blood had crossed it. You need rest, he said. So do you. I had a bed. You had a ceiling and suspicion. They are poor company. He leaned against the wall. My daily question. Vaela closed her eye again. The sun is not up. It is somewhere. Ask. Where are we going? North. That answer is theft. You asked where, not to what. Rowan waited. Vaela sighed, sat up, and adjusted the blanket around her waist. Blackwater Lock. He straightened. The name belonged to a place abandoned 8 years earlier after the upper river changed course. 3 massive floodgates still stood there, but the Crown survey marked them sealed and useless. There is nothing at Blackwater, he said. Then the journey will be peaceful. The eastern gate collapsed. The western gate opens into dead marsh. The central channel cannot carry a vessel this size. Can it carry one now? Unless Stone learned to swim, no. Vaela looked toward the fog beyond the front glass. We will know in 4 days. You bought a cartographer to tell you a river is blocked? I freed a cartographer. What he tells me is his decision. There it was again. A deliberate correction whenever he spoke as if she owned him. Rowan studied her. You knew I worked on Blackwater. Yes. You know the official maps are wrong. Vaela's gaze returned to him. Are they? He had walked into that answer himself. You have used your question, she said. I regret negotiating with you. Most people do. She swung her boots to the floor. Pain tightened her mouth as the movement pulled the stitches. Rowan held out a hand. Vaela looked at it. This is not a proposal, he said. Your human customs are difficult to predict. It is assistance. She took his hand. Her palm was rough from rope and warm around his fingers. Rowan helped her stand. Neither released the other when balance no longer required it. Fog pressed white against the windows. Breakfast? Vaela said quietly. Is that an order? A defense against your conversation. She let go first. By midday, the fog lifted and revealed a river Rowan no longer recognized. The flood had spread 2 miles beyond its usual banks. It covered wheat fields, carried entire trees in its current, and reached the lower windows of abandoned farmhouses. Yet the water moved too slowly for a natural rise. Rowan stood at the bow, watching driftwood circle in a broad eddy. We should be moving faster, he said. Vaela joined him, her injured arm held close beneath a fresh red coat. The wind is weak. Not the boat. The river. He pointed to a stone mile marker, half submerged near the western bank. The water is 6 feet above summer level, but the current has lost half its speed. Something upstream is holding it. The new council gates? They could, but opening them suddenly would send this entire flood north in one wall, toward the marsh settlements. Rowan turned. What settlements? Vaela remained silent. That is why we are going to Blackwater, he said. Someone is using the abandoned gates. Possibly. Holt. Probably. And you need my old surveys to reach them. Yes. Why not say that at the auction? Because Holt's clerk stood 3 feet away. You could have told me aboard. His rivermen boarded us within an hour. And now? Now we are past the council towers. Rowan waited for the rest. Vaela leaned both hands on the wet rail. 3 orc settlements lie north of Blackwater. More than 4,000 people. Holt's council has tried to purchase their land for 5 years. They refused. Last month, the river began rising behind the sealed gates. If the gates fail, the settlements disappear. Holt buys drowned land from families with nothing left. Rowan looked at the wide, slow water. You think he altered my maps? He said. I know he did. How? That is tomorrow's question. People may drown before tomorrow. Vaela turned on him, gold eyes fierce. Do you think I do not know that? The crew at the mast suddenly found the sail very interesting. Vaela lowered her voice. I spent 6 months proving the flood was deliberate. Every council engineer claimed the gates were sealed. Every magistrate refused inspection. Holt controls the roads, the locks, and the courts. I needed someone who knew the old river before he changed it. There were 12 surveyors on the Blackwater project. 11 now work for Holt. And the 12th was sent to a quarry. Yes. Rowan looked north. The anger that had sustained him in prison found a new shape. Bring me every chart you have, he said. Vaela did not smile. She understood the seriousness of agreement too well for celebration. Cabin, she said. They spent the afternoon on the floor beneath the chart wall. Vaela's collection included council maps, smuggled engineer reports, river pilot sketches, and notes gathered from fishermen. Rowan arranged them by date. He marked water levels with charcoal and corrected distances using a brass divider. Vaela sat opposite him with one knee raised, reading measurements aloud. Again, he said. 16 fathoms from the drowned mill to the old eastern marker. Impossible. The pilot measured twice. Then the eastern channel has shifted. Can we use it? Not without knowing where. Rowan spread a blank sheet across the floor. His right hand remembered the work before his mind did. Lines appeared. Bank, current, depth, rise, probable silt. 14 months of stone dust had roughened his fingers, but the charcoal still obeyed them. Vaela watched. What? He asked. Nothing. You have been staring at my hand for 5 minutes. I have never watched a map being born. They are less graceful than horses. More useful on water. He looked at her injured shoulder. How long have you captained this boat? That is not a map question. It is my second question today. You already spent tomorrow's. You answered because lives were at risk. That should not count against recreation. Vaela's tusks showed as she suppressed a smile. 12 years. You began young. I began before the council allowed orcs to hold commercial licenses. The first 3 years, a human friend signed the cargo papers. Holt's council? His father's. Different beard, same appetite. Rowan drew another current line. What happened to the friend? Second question. You are merciless. I paid 300 crowns. I must recover value somehow. The words were clearly a joke. Rowan's hand stopped anyway. Vaela saw it. Regret crossed her face before he looked up. That was poorly chosen, she said. Yes. I am sorry. No defense. No claim that he was too sensitive. Just the apology. Rowan set down the charcoal. Did you purchase other contracts before mine? 4. Why? Because I could. What happened to them? 1 joined a fishing crew. 2 returned to their families. The 4th opened a bakery and still charges me full price. You burned their contracts too? Everyone. Some tightness in Rowan's chest eased. Was mine the most expensive? He asked. By far. I feel valuable again. Do not become unbearable. He picked up the charcoal. Too late. They worked until the lantern burned low. By then, Rowan had found a route. It began through a side channel hidden beneath the flood and ended at an old survey tower 2 miles below Blackwater Lock. The Reed Wolf could not pass the final mile. They would need to continue by skiff or on foot through the marsh. Rowan drew the last bend and reached for a ruler. Vaela held out her left forearm instead. The paper will be ruined if we are searched, she said. Put the route where Holt's men will not think to look. Rowan stared at her green skin. You want me to draw a map on you? Temporary ink. Your arm is not flat. I had noticed. She unfastened the cuff and rolled the sleeve above her elbow. Pale geometric river marks ran along the outer arm, but the inside remained mostly bare. Here, she said. Rowan mixed charcoal with a little lamp oil. He moved beside her on the floor. Hold still. I captain in storms. And yet I have seen you move during stitches. Once. 3 times. The boat moved. He took her wrist. The conversation stopped. Vaela's pulse moved against his thumb. Her forearm was warm, the green skin softer on the inside than the calloused palm suggested. Rowan placed the first line just below her elbow. The map curved toward her wrist. He had drawn on parchment, wood, stone, a soldier's shield, and once the back of a sleeping surveyor. Skin was different. It responded. Each movement of Vaela's fingers changed the path beneath his charcoal. Relax your hand, he said. It is relaxed. Then your hand is naturally prepared to strangle someone. It saves time. Rowan smiled and continued. He marked the drowned mill near the center of her forearm. The hidden channel followed a vein toward her wrist. The survey tower rested just above the pulse point. Vaela watched his face instead of the map. You missed a line, she said. Where? I do not know. I wanted to see whether you were listening. He looked up. Their knees touched. His hand still encircled her wrist. The cabin seemed smaller than it had before. I am listening, he said. Vaela's gaze dropped briefly to his mouth. The boat struck a floating branch. Both moved apart as the hull shuddered. Rowan stared at the unfinished line. The river has poor timing. The river is jealous. He finished the map without looking up again. On the 3rd evening, The Reed Wolf moored at a floating market built across a chain of old barges. Hundreds of lanterns hung over the water. Vendors sold smoked fish, red fruit, medicine, rope, and jars of fireflies. Music drifted from the largest barge, where couples danced beneath a patched sail. Vaela needed lamp oil and information from a lock worker who was supposed to meet her there. Before they went ashore, she handed Rowan a leather pouch. Coins weighed his palm. "What is this?" "Your money." "I have no money. The quarry account owed you 14 months of wages. I persuaded the clerk to include them in the transfer." Rowan opened the pouch. It was less than the law promised and more than he had expected ever to see. "You could have kept this," he said. "Why?" "Because no one knew." Vaela's expression cooled. "I knew." She stepped onto the market gangplank. "Buy something that belongs to you." Rowan remained at the rail. The southbound passenger boat left from the market in 1 hour. Beyond it, a road crossed the western hills toward cities where Holt's name carried less weight. Rowan could board, disappear, and begin again. Vaela had given him enough money to do exactly that. She did not look back to see what he chose. Rowan went to the clothing barge and bought a dark green coat. He bought a new drawing case, 3 sticks of charcoal, and a small brass compass with a scratched lid. Then he returned to the Reed Wolf. Vaela stood at the bow, speaking to a fish seller. When she saw him, her eyes went first to the coat and then to the drawing case. "The passenger boat has not left," she said. "I dislike passenger boats." "You have never mentioned that." "I developed the opinion recently." Something warm moved across her face. The lockworker did not come. Trouble? Or fear? She looked toward the crowd. 2 men wearing ordinary brown coats had stopped beside a lantern stall. Their boots were polished city leather, unsuited to a floating market. "Holt's men?" Rowan asked. "Do not look directly." "You are looking directly." "I am an orc woman in a red coat. Subtlety has limits." The men separated, one moving toward each end of the barge. Vaela took Rowan's hand. "What are you doing?" "Giving them a reason not to notice us." She pulled him toward the musicians. Couples turned beneath lantern light, boots striking the deck in a river dance Rowan had seen but never learned. Vaela placed his right hand at her waist and took his left. "Follow me," she said. "I do not dance." "You also do not obey. Tonight, change one habit." She stepped into him as the rhythm shifted. Rowan nearly collided with her tusks. Vaela moved back, drawing him through the first turn. Her uninjured arm guided his. The red leather coat opened slightly over the fitted black shirt. Lanterns warmed her olive green skin and flashed in the brass rings along her braid. "Left," she murmured. He went right. Her boot came down on his. "That was deliberate," he said. "It was corrective." The men in brown coats reached the dance barge and scanned the crowd. Vaela moved closer. "Look at me," she said. "I am trying to protect my feet." "Rowan." He looked at her. The market vanished at the edges. Vaela's hand rested firmly in his. His palm followed the curve of her waist. The music slowed, and her body moved with his instead of around it. Rowan became aware of every inch between them because there were almost none. "Better," she said. "I have an excellent teacher. You have an adequate survival instinct. Is that why you bought my freedom?" Her gaze changed. He had asked lightly. The question landed heavily. "No," she said. One of Holt's men passed within 10 feet. Vaela lifted her hand from Rowan's and placed it along the side of his neck. She leaned close until her lips were near his ear. "Do not turn," she whispered. The man looked at them, saw an orc woman dancing intimately with a human in a new green coat, and continued past. Rowan's heartbeat did not slow after the danger moved away. Vaela's fingers remained against his neck. "He is gone," Rowan said. "I know." "Then why are we still dancing? The song has not ended. You are very respectful of musicians." "Deeply." The final notes drifted over the black water. Vaela did not step away until the lanterns had stopped swaying between them. They returned to the boat by a route through 3 connected barges. Holt's men never saw them leave. Rowan's hand remembered the shape of her waist long after the music ended. That night, he found Vaela alone on the roof of the cabin. The floating market glowed behind them like a second sky. Ahead, the river was dark and empty. She sat with one knee raised, her red coat spread around her. The temporary map remained on her inner arm, protected beneath clear oil. Rowan climbed up and sat beside her. "You missed dinner," she said. "I ate something on the market." "What?" "A fried object. That narrows nothing. It had a tail. That narrows nothing here." He looked at the brass compass in his hand. "Daily question. You have asked 12? Only one was answered without negotiation." Vaela leaned back on her hands. "Ask. Why did you buy the other 4 contracts?" "I told you. Because I could. That is a reason to act, not the reason you did." For a while, only the market music answered. "My father signed a debt contract when I was 13, Vaela said. He could not read the human legal script. He believed he was borrowing money against a cargo. The document sold 6 years of his labor. Rowan said nothing. "He survived 4, she continued. "The quarry kept the final 2. Her eyes remained on the river. "When I earned my first profitable season, I began purchasing contracts when I could. It does not repair anything, I know that. It repaired 4 lives. Perhaps. 5, Rowan said. Vaela looked at him. "Do not leave yourself out because the number frightens you." Her tusks pressed lightly against her lower lip. Rowan touched the brass cap on the right one before he could reconsider. Vaela went perfectly still. His fingertip rested against warm metal. "May I?" he asked, late but sincere. "You already are. I can stop." She held his gaze. "Do not." He traced the narrow edge of the brass. "Decoration?" "The tusk broke when I was 17. "How?" "A warehouse guard objected to me collecting my father's belongings." "Did he keep all his teeth?" Vaela smiled faintly. "Most." Rowan's finger moved from the brass to the curve of her jaw. Her skin was warm from the night air. Vaela turned slightly into his touch. The distance between them narrowed. Rowan felt her breath. Her golden eyes lowered to his mouth and rose again. A bell rang from the market, the passenger boat announcing departure. Vaela looked toward it. "You can still make it." Rowan's hand fell from her face. "Do you want me to?" "That is not the question. It is mine." She looked down at the map on her arm. "I want you to choose without owing me. And if I choose to stay, then I will believe you tomorrow." The bell rang again. Rowan stayed where he was. Vaela remained beside him until the passenger boat's lanterns disappeared south. By the 4th morning, the river had risen another foot. The Reed Wolf sailed through what the charts called farmland. Only the upper branches of apple trees showed above the water. Dead livestock drifted against fences. Families moved south in fishing boats loaded with blankets and frightened children. Vaela gave away half the vessel's food before noon. She did it without speeches. Each time they passed a refugee boat, the crew lowered sacks of grain, dried fish, and clean water over the side. Vaela recorded nothing and accepted no promises of repayment. Rowan watched from the wheelhouse. "You will run out," he said after the 6th boat. "We have enough to reach Blackwater." "And return?" "That depends on Blackwater." The answer was practical, but exhaustion had begun to show beneath it. She had slept little since the attack. The wound restricted her right arm. Whenever she believed no one watched, she pressed her left hand against the bandage. Rowan stepped behind the wheel. "Go below. You cannot pilot this channel. I designed this channel 8 years ago. Has water changed direction since then?" "Frequently. You have a suspicious nature. It kept you alive. It is currently preventing you from resting." Vaela looked at his hands on the wheel. "The submerged stone markers pull left. Keep them 1 boat length to starboard. If the depth caller says 12 feet, turn immediately west." "I thought I could not pilot." "You cannot. These instructions may conceal it." She surrendered the wheel. 2 hours later, Rowan found her asleep in the captain's cabin, still wearing her boots. She lay on her uninjured side with the red coat folded beneath her head. The map on her forearm had smudged at the edges, but remained readable. He covered her with the blanket. Vaela's eyes opened. "You are very bad at sleeping," Rowan said. "You are in my cabin. Our rules permit entry after knocking. Did you knock?" "Quietly." "Convenient." He sat on the edge of the storage chest. "The western marker is gone, but the channel held. We will reach the survey tower by dusk." Vaela pushed herself upright. "Then we leave the Reed Wolf there. The crew will take the boat south and warn the settlements." "You intend to continue alone?" "With you, if you choose." "That is 2 people. I have ledgers supporting the calculation." "Your shoulder makes it 1.5. Careful, cartographer. You cannot climb the lock mechanism with that arm." "I can, if necessary." "Everything is possible when you ignore the part afterward." Vaela looked at him. "You sound as if you plan to be present afterward." "I bought a coat." "A serious commitment. It would be wasteful to drown in it." She smiled, but concern remained beneath it. "There is something you should see before we leave the boat." Vaela reached beneath the bunk and removed a narrow tin case. It was old, dented at one corner, and sealed with red wax. From it, she withdrew a fragment of paper, wrapped in oilcloth. Rowan recognized his own hand before she unfolded it completely. It was part of a military survey map. 7 years earlier, Crown's soldiers had prepared to cross the northern marsh in pursuit of an Orc refugee caravan. Rowan had copied the operational maps. On the night before the march, he moved a single bridge 2 miles east and marked the true crossing as impassable. The soldiers lost a day in deep mud. Rowan never learned whether the refugees escaped. The map fragment showed the altered crossing. In the bottom corner remained half of his personal survey mark, a small compass enclosed by a square. His breath left slowly. "Where did you get this?" "From my mother." Vaela sat opposite him on the bunk. "She found it beside an abandoned soldier's pack after our caravan crossed the western bridge. The false route had been torn away, but your mark remained. Your family was in that caravan. My parents, my brothers, 43 children from our district." Rowan held the paper carefully. "I did not know if you made it through." "We did." "How did you know the change was mine?" "My mother spent years asking. Eventually, a retired surveyor identified the mark. He gave her your name." Everything rearranged itself. The clothing, the auction notice, the certainty in Vaela's voice when she said she had not bought the wrong man. You searched for me, he said, for 6 years. Why didn't you tell me? At the auction. You would have thought gratitude was another chain. And aboard? You were deciding whether to trust me. I did not want your decision purchased by a debt you never agreed I owed. Rowan looked down at the map fragment. You freed me because of this. I freed you because Holt put an innocent man in a quarry. You paid 300 crowns because of this. Yes. And you need me to stop the flood. Yes. No evasion now. The truth stood between them with all its uncomfortable edges. Did you know about Blackwater when you first began searching? He asked. No. I learned Holt had imprisoned you while investigating the gates. Until then, I intended only to buy the contract and disappear before you could thank me. You are very committed to avoiding gratitude. It becomes ugly when used as currency. Rowan folded the map along its old lines. You should have told me sooner. Yes. The immediate agreement left him nowhere easy to place his anger. Vaela continued. I was afraid that if I told you, every moment between us would become repayment. The cabin, the map, the dance. Her eyes held his. Your hand on my face. Rowan remembered the warmth of the brass tusk cap beneath his fingertip. Were those moments repayment for you? She asked. No. Nor for me. He returned the fragment to her. Do you still believe you owe me? Vaela considered the question. I believe a road existed because you changed a line. My family lived because of that road. I cannot pretend it means nothing. It does not mean you belong to me. No. Then perhaps stop behaving as if your life is an unpaid account. Something opened in her expression, then closed before he could name it. That is easy advice from a man who punished himself for being framed, she said. I did not punish myself. You blamed yourself for trusting the court, for failing to hide the maps, and probably for the quality of prison porridge. The porridge was objectively criminal. Vaela laughed. The sound made the remaining anger difficult to maintain. Rowan reached for her left hand. Thank you for coming to the auction. She let him take it. You do not owe me thanks. I know. That is why I can give it. Her fingers closed around his. And thank you for staying, she said. The 7 days are not finished. No. Ask me afterward. Ask you what? Whether I stayed. The Reed Wolf's lookout called from above. The survey tower appeared through the reeds, a narrow gray column leaning over the flooded marsh. Vaela and Rowan continued by skiff, while the Reed Wolf turned south to warn the 3 settlements. The lower door was underwater, so they climbed through a broken upper window. Someone had searched the tower before them. Cabinets lay split, charts floated in dirty water, and the brass model of Blackwater's gates was gone. Holt's men, Vaela said. Rowan found what they had missed beneath the survey table. Pressure calculations scratched into the wood. The central gate had been prepared to open at dawn. The eastern maintenance tunnel, believed collapsed, could still divert the flood into an empty marsh if they reached its emergency wheel first. A boot scraped on the roof. 4 armed men entered from the stairwell. Vaela overturned the table, and a crossbow bolt struck its underside. She and Rowan escaped through the window onto a condemned cable bridge spanning the flooded ravine. The bridge twisted under their weight. Behind them, Holt's men hacked through the jammed window. Halfway across, a rotten plank broke beneath Rowan. He fell through and caught one cable with both hands. Floodwater churned far below. Vaela dropped flat and seized his wrist. Pain crossed her face as the stitches in her shoulder pulled open. Let go, Rowan gasped. You will fall too. No. She dragged him high enough to reach the edge. Together they rolled onto the far ledge, cut the anchor rope, and watched the bridge collapse away from Holt's men. Rain covered the blood spreading beneath Vaela's sleeve. They sheltered in a ruined toll house. Rowan lit a small lantern and opened the medicine pack. "You tore the wound, saving me." I noticed. He loosened the bandage. "May I?" "Yes." As he cleaned the cut, Vaela watched his hands. "You should know the full truth before Blackwater. I needed your knowledge, but that was not why I searched for you. Years ago, you changed a military map so soldiers missed a hidden orc road. My family and 43 children escaped along it. I drew a false marsh. You gave us a road. That does not mean you owe me." "I know." Her voice softened. "That is why I burned the contract." Rowan tied a fresh bandage. "And I am not here because you paid for me. No. I am here because you gave me a choice." Vaela lifted her uninjured hand to his face. "Then choose carefully." He covered her green hand with his. "May I kiss you?" Her amber eyes dropped briefly to his mouth. "Yes." Their first kiss began carefully around her small tusks and injured shoulder. Vaela's fingers slid into his wet hair, and caution disappeared when she drew him closer. Rowan held her waist, feeling her strength and the quick rise of her breath. The brass cap on her tusk brushed his lip. When they parted, their foreheads remained together. "The treatment," she whispered. "You are very respectful of medicine." "Deeply." He kissed her once more, then finished the knot. They reached Blackwater Lock an hour before midnight. The structure rose from the marsh like a drowned fortress. 3 stone towers stood across the river, connected by rusted iron walkways. Behind them, floodwater pressed against the gates with enough force to make the masonry tremble. Lanterns moved along the central tower. Holt was already there. Rowan and Vaela approached through the eastern reeds. The temporary map on her forearm led them to a drainage arch hidden beneath thorn bushes. The tunnel beyond was half filled with cold water. "This reaches the maintenance chamber," Rowan whispered, "if it has not collapsed. Your faith in your own work is inspiring. I was 28 and underpaid. A dangerous combination." They entered. Water reached Rowan's chest. Vaela held the lantern above her head with her left hand while the right stayed close to her side. The tunnel narrowed until stone scraped both shoulders. Ahead, iron bars blocked the passage. Rowan felt below the surface for the old release catch. Nothing. He tried again. His fingers found a chain buried in silt. He pulled. The bars lifted 6 inches and stopped. "Enough?" Vaela asked. "For you, no." That sounded personal. "You are built like a fortress." Was that intended as admiration? Entirely. Together, they forced the bars high enough to crawl beneath. The maintenance chamber smelled of rust and stagnant water. Massive gear wheels filled the walls. At the center stood 3 control levers, each tall as a man. Rowan wiped mud from the brass labels. "Eastern Spillway," he said. "This one." Vaela tested the lever. It did not move. "Locked from above," she said. "The safety pin is in the central tower." "Can we break it?" "Not from here." A voice came from the upper stairs. "No," Holt said. "You cannot." Men filled the doorway behind him. Holt descended slowly, protected by 4 council guards. He was a broad human man with a shaved head, a carefully trimmed white beard, and rings on every finger. Unlike the rivermen, he wore a dry blue coat. His gaze rested on Rowan. "The quarry improved your color," he said. Rowan stepped between him and the lever. "You always did mistake suffering for useful management." Holt smiled. "And you always mistook maps for morality." Vaela's hand moved toward her knife. 2 crossbows lifted. "Careful," Holt said. The captain has already damaged expensive property. You mean me? Rowan asked. The contract. The court expected 11 years of labor. The court expected whatever you paid it to expect. Holt's rings clicked against the railing as he descended. You could have had a comfortable career. I asked you to adjust 3 boundary lines. You asked me to erase villages. Villages move, rivers move. Maps should be flexible. Truth is inconvenient that way. Holt looked at Vaela. How much did he tell you? Enough. Then you know he falsified a military route years ago. Your heroic cartographer is not above changing lines when emotion requires it. Vaela's expression did not shift. That line saved my family. For the first time, Holt looked surprised, then amused. So that is why you paid so much? No, Vaela said. I paid because you were afraid to let him speak. Holt's smile vanished. Above them, a bell rang once. Midnight. At dawn, Holt said, the central gate opens. The flood does what rivers have always done. The council purchases unusable land and rebuilds. In 10 years, no one remembers 3 illegal settlements. 4,000 people remember, Rowan said. Not if you calculated correctly. Vaela drew her knife. The crossbows turned toward her. Rowan looked at the gear wall. The safety pin locked the eastern lever from above, but every gate shared the same counterweight shaft. The original engineers had designed an emergency release in case the control tower flooded. He had marked it on a maintenance drawing, 8 years ago. Underpaid but thorough. You changed my maps, Rowan said. Holt's attention returned to him. Of course. You copied the surface plans. I purchased every survey. Not everyone. Rowan kicked the small iron latch beneath the eastern gear. The emergency weight dropped. The floor shook. The guards lost balance as a chain ripped through the wall. Vaela moved before the crossbows steadied. Her knife struck one weapon aside. She drove her shoulder into the second guard and sent him into the water channel. Rowan seized the eastern lever with both hands. It moved 1 inch. Holt drew a pistol from beneath his coat. Vaela saw it and threw her knife. The blade struck his hand. The pistol fired into the ceiling. Stone dust fell. Now, Vaela shouted. She reached Rowan and took the lever beside him, using both arms despite the reopened wound. Together, they pulled. Gears screamed through the lock. Somewhere beyond the wall, iron moved against 8 years of rust. The eastern gate opened. Water exploded into the dead marsh. The maintenance chamber tilted beneath the force. Holt grabbed the railing. One guard fled up the stairs. Another dropped his weapon and helped drag a third from the channel. Rowan held the lever down, while Vaela locked it with the emergency chain. The flood level began to fall. Not gently. Water rushed through the spillway with a roar that drowned every voice. Cracks raced across the central tower wall. We have to leave, Rowan shouted. Vaela pulled him toward the tunnel. Holt blocked the entrance, blood running over his jeweled hand. You destroyed everything, he said. No, Rowan answered. I corrected the map. Holt lunged. Vaela caught him at the shoulders. His greater weight drove both of them against the channel rail. The metal gave way. Vaela slipped. Rowan seized her left wrist as she fell toward the rushing maintenance channel. Holt caught the remaining rail with one hand. For one suspended moment, all 3 hung above the black water. Pull me up, Holt demanded. Rowan looked at Vaela. Her wounded arm could not reach the ledge. Blood darkened her shoulder. Her fingers began to slide inside his grip. There was no decision. Rowan used both hands for Vaela. Holt screamed as the rail tore loose. He fell into the channel and vanished through the open spillway. Rowan dragged Vaela onto the stone. She collapsed against him, breathing hard. "You chose poorly," she whispered. "I disagree. He owed you money. You gave me wages." The tower groaned. They crawled through the drainage arch as the central wall collapsed behind them. A wave chased them through the tunnel. Rowan pushed Vaela ahead, felt the water strike his back, and lost the floor beneath his feet. The flood carried him into open marsh. Cold water erased direction. He struck a submerged branch, surfaced once, and heard Vaela call his name. Then the current pulled him under again. A green hand caught the collar of his new coat. Vaela dragged him toward a stone embankment. Rowan found mud beneath one knee. Together they climbed above the falling water. They lay on the bank beneath the storm. For several minutes, neither moved. Then Rowan began to laugh. Vaela turned her head. "What? You told me floodwater was dangerous. You required practical instruction. My coat survived. A miracle." Her laughter joined his, exhausted and breathless. In the east, the sky began to lighten. The water below Blackwater Lock had dropped 3 feet. Rowan rolled onto his side. Vaela's eyes were closed, rain shining on her olive-green face. The brass cap remained on her tusk. The map on her forearm had washed away. He touched her cheek. Vaela opened her eyes. 7 days? He asked. "Not yet." "How long?" 2 more. "Good." She covered his hand with hers. "Why good?" Rowan leaned down and kissed her beneath the clearing sky. This kiss held no caution left over from the toll house. Vaela pulled him close with her uninjured arm. Rowan tasted rain and river water, felt the edge of her tusk against his lip, and decided there were worse places to begin a life than mud beside a ruined floodgate. When they separated, Vaela searched his face. "You are still free," she said. "I know." "Holt is gone. You do not need my boat." "I know." "Then why? You are using your daily question early." Her eyes narrowed. Rowan smiled. "Ask me afterward." The Reed Wolf found them shortly after sunrise. The crew had returned when the river began to fall. They brought people from the nearest settlement and 2 magistrates who had finally discovered courage once Holt's control vanished with him. The surviving council guards gave statements. The measurements scratched into the survey table remained above the flood. So did Holt's dry blue coat, caught on a broken gate chain with the council seal inside its pocket. By afternoon, word traveled south that Blackwater had been opened and the settlements were safe. Vaela spent the return journey pretending her shoulder did not require rest. Rowan spent it ensuring she failed. He took the wheel when she tried to stand too long. He changed the bandage when blood showed through. He moved his belongings from the crew's shelf into the captain's cabin without asking. Vaela watched him place the drawing case beside her charts. "That appears permanent," she said. The shelf was empty. It held my winter gloves. "They have moved to a more efficient location." "Where?" "I will answer one question each day." Vaela threw a pillow at him. On the 7th evening, the Reed Wolf moored beside the same floating market. The lanterns had been relit. Musicians played beneath the patched sail. This time, no men in council boots watched the crowd. Vaela stood at the gangplank wearing a fresh, dark red coat. Her shoulder was bound beneath it, but color had returned to her face. She held Rowan's original wage pouch in one hand and a folded document in the other. 7 days, she said. 7 days. She handed him the document. It was not a contract. It was a letter from the northern magistrates clearing his conviction and restoring his position with the Crown Survey, should he want it. Attached was a promise of rooms in the capital and payment for every map Holt had stolen. "You arranged this?" Rowan asked. "The settlements have persuasive elders." "And if I return to the capital?" The passenger boat leaves in an hour. Vaela's voice remained steady. Only the tightness of her fingers around the gangplank rail betrayed her. You promised to put me ashore wherever I chose, Rowan said. Yes. What if I choose here? Then you are ashore. You are avoiding the question. You have not asked one. Rowan stepped closer. Do you want me to leave? Vaela looked at him for a long time. No, she said. It was the simplest answer she had given him. Do you want me to stay because I changed a military map 7 years ago? No. Because I helped open Blackwater? No. Because you paid 300 crowns? Her tusks showed. If you mention the price again, I will recover it by making you scrub the entire hull. Why then? Vaela closed the remaining distance. Because you are irritating. You question every instruction. You draw on my skin without making straight lines. You nearly drowned wearing a new coat. And when you touch me, I forget every sensible reason to send you away. Rowan placed both hands at her waist. That is almost romantic. It was not intended to be. Then you failed. He kissed her on the gangplank. Music played behind them. River lanterns turned the water gold. Vaela's arms went around his shoulders, drawing him against the strength of her body. The crew began cheering from the deck, until Vaela lifted one hand without ending the kiss and made a gesture that sent them laughing toward the stern. When she finally let Rowan breathe, her forehead remained against his. The captain's cabin has one bunk, she said. I am a cartographer. I understand spatial limitations. Do you? I intend to conduct a thorough survey. Vaela laughed and kissed him again. 6 months later, the Reed Wolf carried a new brass plate beside its wheelhouse door. Vaela, Captain. Rowan, cartographer. The words were equal in size. Rowan had insisted on that. Vaela had claimed the plate was too expensive and then polished it every morning for a week. Together, they mapped safe channels through the northern floodplain. Their charts gave the marsh settlements legal boundaries the council could no longer pretend not to see. Vaela carried cargo. Rowan trained local surveyors. Whenever they encountered another debt auction, the Reed Wolf remained at the quay until at least one contract burned. On quiet nights, Rowan worked in the captain's cabin, while Vaela piloted beneath the stars. His drawing case shared the shelf with her winter gloves, which he had eventually admitted were hidden beneath the bunk. The old military map fragment hung inside a small glass frame above their charts. Not as a debt, as the first road between them. One evening, Vaela entered the cabin and found Rowan drawing a new map across the inside of her forearm. That is not a recognized river, she said. It is a proposed route. The line began at her wrist, curved along her green skin, and ended beneath the pale branching tattoo near her elbow. To where? She asked. Rowan put down the charcoal. Wherever you choose. Vaela studied the line, then him. North, she said. Again? The river flows that way when the gates are closed. He smiled at the answer that had once infuriated him. Vaela caught the front of his shirt and pulled him to his feet. The brass rings in her braid clicked softly as she kissed him. Rowan wrapped one arm around her waist and the other around her uninjured shoulder. Outside, the Reed Wolf moved into open water. No contract told Rowan to remain aboard. No debt required Vaela to keep him. The road ahead existed because they chose the same line, and this time neither of them needed a map to know why.